Mamdani over the weekend decided to hop on a bench press at a public event, and he was unable to do. I went back and looked at the pictures. It is 45-pound plates on each side and a bar, traditionally 135 pounds. He couldn't do it one time. And I understand some of you may never have been in a gym. You may never have laid down on a bench press. You may never have done it at all. I do think this is emblematic of why young men are just completely rejecting the Democrat Party. I'll give you a story on this, Buck. Yesterday, my 14-year-old, he's a ninth grader, came home, and he had been with a friend over the weekend. And he said, Dad, I just got 155 one time on my bench press. And he was so excited about it. And, I gave him a high five as dads do. He's playing football. He wants to lift. He wants to get stronger. All of his friends see saying someone is a Democrat as an insult. These are kids from all different backgrounds. And I do think that this inability to just connect with normal men is emblematic of Zohran Mamdani's inability to bench. Am I making too much of this, or do you think it's a symbol of Democrat weakness and also just an inability to understand average male voters? That is incredible weakness.
No, it took some time for it really to sink in what the Democrat ideology and the talking points, the orthodoxy was around things like toxic masculinity. I remember I had this discussion on the Bill Maher show right before the election, where I said Trump is going to win, and this is why, and this is one of the reasons why. Sure enough, that was all correct. Even though, and I would say the audience actually didn't boo really. I remember I went back and watched this again. The audience was willing to hear it out because I think that they realized, some of them knew at least, the train that was coming down the tracks, and the Trump train was already going toot toot. I mean, it was on the way at that point. It was October. It was right before the election. But Clay, that we talked about, toxic masculinity and masculinity in general. First of all, I remember one of the other panelists there, maybe still has a job at CNN. I don't know. I'm being quite honest with you. I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe as a contributor there. And she said, why are we talking about men? We should be talking about women and minorities, basically. It's like, well, the topic is masculinity. So, if that's the topic,
of course. I mean, that is completely expected, right? That she would immediately say, I don't know why we're talking. Yeah. Why are you talking about this? Well, it's the topic.
And then when I try to get into it, I said, if you look at masculine virtues, you're not allowed to talk about masculine virtues as a Democrat. And Democrats are not allowed to say it. You can't say things like courage, bravery, because they'll say, what do you mean? Well, women have that too. It's like, okay, yeah, but we're trying to look at what is true generally, genetically, about men and women in the aggregate. And fundamentally, men and women are different. And this is what the Democrat Party decided. They were going to destroy this difference. They were going to destroy it with the trans issue, but also more generally, they were going to destroy it. Women should conduct themselves like men, should pursue the same ends as men, should have the same life aspirations as men. And, this is where you can get into it's fine if a woman doesn't want to have a family, of course. It's fine if a woman wants to choose a career first, of course. And they should have that full right to do. But as a society, generally speaking, some things tend to be true about men and women, about the careers they choose, about the hours they put in, and it's okay to promote that. It's okay to say, hey, this is actually a good thing for men to do, or this is a good thing for women to do in general. And Democrats ran against all of that. And you find yourself thinking, they got rid of a lot of the words that you would use to describe wimpy men or wimpiness. I don't even really know how you're supposed to talk about this anymore. But this is where they found themselves as a party, and they won't walk back from this. They're starting to try. I said Gavin Newsom is putting out okay, here's a perfect example. Gavin Newsom put out, or his team put out, same thing, a photo, right? You saw this, Clay, of him in high school. He's got like a long scarf on. He's got slick hair, and he's like, hey, and and JD Vance looking a little bit like a doofus, but it's high school. A lot of us look like doofuses in high school, and the whole thing, I guess, is like, I'm like handsome, cool, Gavin Newsom, unlike this guy who was like a dork in high school. And it's like, well, he's the vice president of the United States. He's been incredibly successful. He actually looks great now. I think he would kick Gavin Newsom's ass in a fight. Not that that matters, but if we're talking about this stuff, and every time they try to do this, Clay, it rings hollow. Every time they try to go down the masculinity pathway, it rings hollow because Democrats will tear down what they're saying.
Yes, and Gavin Newsom is almost 60. I was cool in high school is not something that I think appeals very much to people when they look at a 60-year-old. I think that men are not above criticism, and this is why I look at the Zoran Mamdani attempted bench press. And for those of you who don't know, 135 pounds is a goal that a 14 or 15-year-old boy who is trying to play football would aspire to, right? I think for people out there who don't know, one plate on each side, a 45, which is the typical top weight, is a goal that young boys, I would say, maybe some of you out there haven't been able to do it yet. I'd say that's a good goal. You want to be able to have at least one plate. And then for you and me, I bet it was when I'm, 20 years old or 19 or whatever I want to get 2 plates, right? I want to be able to do 225, which is a lot of weight to bench press. But if you ever go into a gym, that is the goal. That's how most men, and some women, but most men would progress. They'd say, I want to get 1 plate on each side, and then eventually I want to have 2 plates.
Bench press 225. And so for any of you who are doubters or haters out there, that video could be forthcoming very quickly. We could both bench 225, okay? So before all the snark comes flying our way.
By the way, to be fair, don't know how many reps on 225 I would get, but I can definitely do.
We can bench it. You can bench it, I can bench it. We can both do 225 as we're having this Mamdani conversation.
So when I look at it, I just think to myself, the criticism of men to me that I would give is that men are not masculine enough. And that the failure of masculinity is that men are not strong enough, both mentally and physically, to take on the responsibilities that we as men should. And so when I see someone who is physically weak like Mamdani, it doesn't make me think, oh, this is someone who believes in strong men. Is it symbolic? Yes. Are there people who are incredibly weak that are very strong mentally? Certainly that occurs. But when you are 33 years old like Mamdani, and it looks to me like you don't even know how to hold a bench, hold the bar, you've never been on a bench before, it is a sign, I think, of weakness mentally and physically when it comes to the masculine idea.
It all ties in, too, with the ideology, because victim ideology, that's not fair, let's not compete, everybody gets a trophy. You go down all of these thoughts, all these talking points. These Democrats embrace this stuff, right? Everybody gets a trophy. Competitiveness is wrong. Oh, I'm a victim. My choices don't matter. I'm not accountable. Other people hold me down. I'd be stronger. I'd be thinner. I'd be smarter. I'd be more successful if somebody else wasn't doing what they're, this is very central to the modern Democrat Party ethos. And for people to say, well, what about all the lib billionaires? First of all, look at Jeff Bezos. Guy gets rich enough and, he's taken enough steroids to, probably give a horse a heart attack. So, they want to be strong too in some cases. And by the way, I think he's gotten a little bit more right wing as he's gotten stronger. So I'm actually all for it. And you look at
which actually goes to your point, which I think is well taken, that if you just measure testosterone levels, as testosterone goes up, Republican voting becomes more likely.
I think it would be the one of the strongest indicators if you did blood tests of every American man walking into a voting booth. There would be some exceptions. There would be, I think the correlation would break down among some minority voters where it wouldn't, it would. But I think among white men, you would have probably a pretty high, just because of the, I think you'd have probably a pretty high correlation with low T and voting Democrat. Yes, I think that is true. And it might be true of the broader male population as well. I just have to think about, voting allegiance, cultural influences. There's other things too. But if you just walk around and you had a good sense as to what the average testosterone level of a room is, I think you'll have a pretty good sense. Again, it's not perfect, but a pretty good sense about the politics.
I tweeted that if you only allowed people who could bench their body weight to vote, Republicans would win 95-5. I don't think it would be close. Like if you just said, hey, instead of being 18, new rule, you have to be able to bench your body weight to be able to vote, I think it would be a massive Republican landslide.
Yeah, well, strength is something that, and generally physical fitness, I'd say, but strength is something where you either can or you can't, and it forces you to at least think in the real world. Better version of, can someone kick your ass or not? A lot of guys, you sit down, and by the way, you don't always know. That's certainly the case. But guys generally will think about this. Like, if I had to take this guy, could I take this guy? It's a very right-wing thought. Left-wing is not to even engage, I think, in this kind of thinking, and to assume that the world does not revolve at some level around these power dynamics and power relationships, which it still does, even if the left and the collectivists don't want it to. All right, cell phones are meant to last a long time, but not a lifetime. You've had a cell phone that's lost its battery power, one that lost its ability to process data at a quick speed. So you know that cell phone needs to get replaced. Thanks to PureTalk, you can replace your cell phone with a new one without having to pay hundreds of dollars. When you switch to PureTalk this month, you're going to get a Samsung Galaxy A36 for free with a $35 a month qualifying plan. That's just $35 a month for unlimited talk, text, and data, and a free Samsung phone with scratch-resistant Gorilla Glass and a battery that lasts all day, all on America's most dependable 5G network. Look, supporting companies like PureTalk is a good thing, and you win by cutting your cell phone bill in half. They win by hiring more Americans and helping veterans in the process, too. Make the switch in as little as 10 minutes. Dial pound 250, say the keywords Clay and Buck to get your free phone today. That's pound 250. Say Clay and Buck to switch to America's wireless company, PureTalk.